Switching careers, it's really not about starting over. The best leaders don't resist change. They learn how to surf it. As simple as doing some deep breathing. Leading through change is really about courage. And that is your job as a professional, is to make sure that you're getting exposure for your results.
Welcome to Loud and Lifted, the female leadership podcast where we trade fluff for practical tools. Today, we're surfing change with Sonja Price. If you've ever felt the pull to pivot or your company keeps shifting under your feet, this episode is your roadmap. Sonja breaks down why reinvention is translation, not tear down, how to build a start today career roadmap, and the nervous system reset that helps you show up with executive presence when it counts. We're also reframing job hopping as upward momentum and talk about performing one level up so that promotion becomes the obvious next step. Grab a notebook. You'll leave with scripts, checklists, and one action you can take before the end of the day. Let's get from victory to visionary together. Sonja Price, welcome to Loud and Lifted. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Betsy. It's such an honor to be on your show.
So let's start this conversation. Let's talk about you and let's talk about your story and how you really reinvented your career through the years.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, I have reinvented myself a handful of times. And, I started right out of college many, many years ago. I worked for a startup and I kind of fell into the role of a product manager slash usability test engineer. And while I was working for that startup organization, I really observed and analyzed the leadership of the organization because we got several rounds of funding. And each and every time that we hired a new leader or a new team member, the culture and the team dynamics would shift overnight. And that got me really interested in what makes great leaders and what makes bad leaders, because I saw examples of both.
Right.
And so I went back to school and I got a master's in leadership and organization development. And then eventually used that to shift into completely different career and got into consulting. Really loved that. I was doing change management consulting. However, I always had this entrepreneurial pursuit. And so I started a few companies on the side, including my own tech company, where I was the leader. And I got to learn a lot about what does it mean to be a good leader myself, and probably did it wrong,
Sure.
some of the time, but also,
Yeah.
but you learn through failure. And I think, always having people's best interests at heart. I think you can fail and you can make bad decisions, but as long as you take care of your people and you own your mistakes and you know how to bounce back from that, and you know how to be resilient, I think a lot of people can be really forgiving, and I think people follow authenticity. But I've continued on in consulting, and then started another business, and I did a career coaching practice, a leadership development practice, and now I'm primarily focused on team development and working with senior level leaders, helping them understand how to navigate change and how to address all of the challenges that come along with that, both at a personal level, but also from, leading change and orchestrating environments and cultures and workplaces where people really want to be a part of it.
Oh my gosh. So if you think about how that has come in this big full circle moment, right? Like you had these different career paths that you went down and you created a lot of change for yourself. And now
Mm-hmm.
you're helping others deal with change. And I guess my first question is, how have you learned to embrace change rather than fear it? Because a lot of people do fear change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, from a personal perspective, switching careers, it's really not about starting over. And I think a lot of people think, oh, I want to do something totally different, but then I'm going to have to take this huge step back. And I think that's the wrong mindset to bring to it, because I really think that it is about bringing your full toolkit with you into a new arena and knowing how to market and position yourself effectively for the roles that you want to land. So many, many, many skills are transferable. However, depending upon the field, the industry, and the organization, they call those skills something slightly different. So if you can learn how to shift your jargon, shift your mindset, shift your language, and know how to talk about yourself effectively, then I think, that truly is some of the secret sauce of being able to successfully shift careers without feeling like you have to start all over or take a huge step back.
That makes sense. And in previous episodes, we've talked about things like career security over job security, right? Like your job might not be secure, but your career can be stable, but also from a brand perspective and that personal brand. So as you were going through these different roles, how are you building your personal brand?
Oh, well, such a great question. There's always this sweet spot between what are your passions or what do you want to do? What is your skill set? And then also what is the market demanding? And I
True.
think I think we oftentimes will kind of over index on one side of that, right? We'll say, oh, this is what I'm passionate about. This is what I want to do. But then we fail to do the market research to say, well, is that actually a viable career? Are there plenty of opportunities out there? Who's hiring for it? What do they pay? Will that afford the kind of lifestyle that I want to have? Does that give me enough resources to care for my family and do all the things that I want to do? Or vice versa, people say, well, I'm just going to go after the highest paying role, or I'm going to go after, what is most available. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're lacking the passion or the motivation to do it, then is it just going to be a slog every day? Like
Right.
maybe you can land a job doing it, but then are you going to, 3 months, 6 months, a year into it, are you going to be like, oh my God, why did I choose this path? Maybe it's time for me to start over again or, reevaluate and reconsider something else.
So did that ever happen to you? Did you ever make a change or a change happened to you and then you were like, oh, wow, why did I do that?
Yes, actually. To be totally authentic, and I think this is part of growth and living life. Like things don't always turn out the way that we want it to. So when I went to school for leadership and organization development, and when I initially went to school, I was like, cool, this is going to be so great, so easy. And as soon as I get this fancy degree, companies are going to be lining up to hire me. However, I didn't really know that there were several different facets inside of that very
Mhm.
broad category. Like, what does that even mean? Leadership and organization development. And so then I went on a journey of researching, like, well, do I want to get into training? Do I want to get into executive coaching? Do I want to get into change management, or
Mm.
and even inside of consulting, you could say consulting. And
Sure.
what does that mean? There's so many different endeavors, right? So based on my research at the time, I studied it based on what paid the most and what I thought
Sure.
that I could qualify for. And I ended up getting a few different jobs in change management. And, I learned a ton. I really did learn a ton. So I have zero regrets about doing that. But what I found is that it actually really was not the right fit for me because
Mm.
it was just so chaotic. It's just
Mm.
like really chaotic. And being an external consultant, sometimes it's really hard to have the level of influence that I really desired
Mm.
to help create the change that these organizations were asking for. And so, I learned a ton, but
Sure.
ultimately what I realized is that what I really loved at that particular moment in time was coaching executives and how to help them think about the change and how to help them lead the change. So instead of being a consultant where everyone was looking at me and saying, "You do it. You do it. You lead the change."
You're the bad
Which
guy.
there's many 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 different aspects of change management, and it's part of what makes it so interesting. But part of what also makes it so overwhelming is that there's many different juggling acts of like, oh, we got to be paying attention to this and what's going on with these stakeholders and is everybody enrolled and da 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 da. But I realized that it's actually the leaders who need to be the most involved and they need to be the one leading the change.
Sure.
And that's what I loved the most, was actually coaching executives and senior level leaders to know, okay, hey, this is your organization, this is your team, let's help you craft the narrative and let's help you overcome the challenges, inherent in this for you. But really, we need to help you be in the limelight and people need to be hearing from you because it's ultimately who
Sure.
they're going to follow.
That's so true. It has to be coming from internally, that people who are going to be still there, next year.
Hmm.
So when you're working with these leaders, because there is this concern over uncertainty and just not knowing what's going to happen. And as a leader, you got to be able to deal with it, whether it's change that you agree with or not. But how do you get leaders to reframe that change as an opportunity versus a risk, and getting them on board to help, sell it to their team essentially?
Well, I think I've kind of, over time, I've learned that the best leaders don't resist change. They learn how to surf it, because
Mm,
change is a constant. It's always going to be happening. So if we think of change more as a wave and help people know how to surf that wave and not wipe out in the process, then how do we how do we work with these folks to help them understand that, look, this is always going to be happening, even though we have this big huge change initiative. It might last 12 or 18 months or however long that this large scale enterprise wide change might happen, but it will continue. It will continue to move on, and if it's not this, it's something else. And so how can we help people overcome that initial resistance to change and actually develop the skills to just know, like, hey, this is kind of a normal part of life, and who you are and how you engage with it and how you show up and your presence inside of it really matters. And to help people understand that, like, our nervous systems are a huge component of this. And I think there's a
mm.
lot of new science around this, and this is a personal area of curiosity for me now, is how do we help everyone be able to calm our nervous system so that we can handle the challenges that show up for us on a day-to-day basis, because it's always going to happen. But how do we surf this, and how do we think of it as a wave and not just like, oh my god, this is complete chaos, and just this wipeout that really causes people to withdraw and not even want to engage at all.
I love that analogy of surfing and waves, because that is so true. It's gonna come and go, and it's not gonna stop, right? Like, just like a wave, they keep coming. Sometimes they're bigger, and sometimes they make a bigger impact than you anticipated, but that makes so much sense. And that happens in our personal lives too, right? So I think sometimes we forget that people have stuff changing in their personal lives as well as professionally, and you're trying to balance lots of waves coming in at one time from different directions. And the neuro system part is interesting. So, is there anything in like layman's terms that we could understand of how we can help control that personally?
Mm, I mean, as simple as doing some deep breathing,
Mm,
really, truly, like that is the most simple thing, is just come back to the breath. Take 10 deep breaths. Take some time. I use Insight Timer, if anyone is
mm,
familiar with that. And depending upon how much time that I have, if I feel my nervous system starting to ramp up, if I have time in between meetings, I go and find a quiet space and I'll put it on for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I generally don't have time for more than 15 minutes, but I do recognize that if I just take that time and space to myself, close my eyes, get internal, and really just, saying whatever I need to say to myself, of, sometimes, and I can be very authentic here, right? But sometimes it's just a matter of, like, connecting with our inner child, because that's usually who's screaming in the background.
mm.
And our thought process is so crazy that we're like, I need to do this, and I got to take care of this, and these emails need to be answered, and so wants this from me. But actually just slowing down and being in our bodies, I really, really, really believe in the power of embodiment practices. And I really believe that this is a secret key for all of society as we move forward, is to learn how to calm ourselves down, and to actually speak to that inner child. And I feel a little bit funny saying this on this business podcast, but really
No.
just like, touching base, connecting with your heart, putting a hand on your heart, putting a hand on your gut, your abdomen, right? And just connecting with that little one and being like, look, I love you. I got you. Like, there is no challenge greater, there's no challenge that we can't get through, and I will care for you. I got you. I'll take care of you. And whatever these emails are, whatever the boss is screaming about, whatever's going on, it's okay. And I'm in control here. I've got this. I'm going to take care of this. And One of my mentors very early on in my career, and I love this, she said to me, you know what, Sonja, if you don't answer all your emails today, no small children will die as a result of it.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
oh, right, right.
Right.
And we have that lizard brain back
Sure.
there that thinks like, oh my God, this guy is falling. Like if I don't take care of this, the tiger's going to jump on me and eat me. And
Right.
that's not true. It's not
Yeah.
true. It's not true. Yeah.
Need a little perspective at time because you're right. Most of us are
Mm-hmm.
not dealing in stuff that's that mission critical, that it's not going to be there tomorrow or anything detrimental is going to happen to anybody else. So I think that's so important. And I love the breathing aspect, right? I think that's something that we don't take time to do. And funny, I go to yoga and a lot of times in the beginning, they have like a mindfulness part where you have to sit there in silence and breathe and, try to not think about anything, but I think about everything. But it's hard because we're
Mm-hmm.
constantly going and we're constantly overloaded. So to have to sit there and just breathe and listen to your breath and try to keep your mind clear, like I don't know. I don't know if it's getting any easier, but at least I feel like I'm thinking less stuff. But it's a good reset. And to, do that anytime during the day when you feel like you're a little going crazy, I think that's just a good
Mm-hmm.
a good thing to
Mm-hmm.
focus on. And I joked about the layman terms. Well, yes, we can all do that. We can all sit there. We can all take deep breaths. I love that. That's very interesting. Is there
And
any
we
other
can
tips like that?
actually do it together, which I would love to add this here is that,
Yes.
oftentimes we think that self care needs to be done alone in
Mm,
silence, but we can all care for ourselves and we can do it collectively. And I will tell you that like this is a practice that I've incorporated in the work that I do with teams. And when we're going through strategic planning sessions and talking about big change and all these things, I can feel it in the room. I can feel everybody starting to ramp up.
mm,
And so sometimes I'll just say, hey, it's time for a break. Everybody go get a drink of water, get a snack. If you need to make a phone call, like do what you got to do, but be back in 10 minutes or however long, 10, 20 minutes, however long we have time for. And then when we come back, I will actually start the meeting with some breathing exercises and help everybody just calm down and be at the same level with each other as much as possible, right? And you better believe that creates such a different dynamic in the
mm.
room. And if you can get everybody to calm down and just like, bring it back down, get everybody on the same base level together, people will think more clearly. They will listen to each other more effectively and be less likely to jump all over each other and be like, yeah, but blah, 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 blah. And
Right.
so, and it's funny, some of these large scale projects that I've run, when it all comes down to the end and I say, hey, asking for feedback, asking for areas of improvement consistently, I always hear, oh my God, I loved it when you made us breathe together. And it's like, it's that simple. It is that simple. So,
Oh my gosh.
I offer that to anybody who's listening is like, and it doesn't matter if you are the decision maker or the one in charge. Like, if you're in a meeting and you see it ramping up, like, is that something that you might feel comfortable requesting for everyone? And if you're a project manager, product manager, whatever, could you actually, if you're leading a meeting, could you start it that way and just say, hey, you know what? I'd like to try something new and different today. Let's all take 10 deep breaths together. And it might seem scary, but I bet you that you'll get feedback. People will come to you and they'll say, wow, that was really cool. I love that you did that.
Oh, and you know what? That's probably one of those things, maybe the first time people are like, "What the heck is going on?" But then they'll
Mm-hmm.
realize how great it is. And it's funny, I think about how I yelled at my kids, not really, but on a playing volleyball, right? When they're all intense and they're all like and you're like, "Just take a deep breath." Like, just so it's funny that you do think about that, especially in sports situations, but, like, let's think about it from a professional situation. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Is there
Mm-hmm.
anything else from a mindset tip or trick of how to deal with change when you're on the receiving end, whether you're the leader or you're just an employee? What else do you suggest when you have to deal with change?
Well, I think that, leading through change is really about courage because it is scary. No one wants to change. We all resist change, no matter how big or how small that it is. And especially in organizational life, when there's large change happening, everyone's scared. They're terrified that they're going to lose their job and they don't know what's coming. They don't know where they're being led to, what's going to happen next. And so I think, it really is about courage. It's not about I mean, it is about, checklists and making sure that we're getting things moving forward, but that's the management of change. Managing change is about checklist and project
Mm,
tasks and, all of the different things that need to be accomplished and checked off to get us to the end product. But leading through change is really about having the courage to be a leader and to have the presence and be someone who people want to follow. And sometimes that means being authentic, and maybe that means speaking up to say, this is a big change, and I'm kind of scared of it too,
sure.
but here's how we're going to get through it together.
You used two of my favorite words is courage and being authentic. And I think that's so important from a leadership perspective. So I love that you've mentioned that actually more than once because it's important. And
Hmm.
that's what builds great leaders and that trust with your team. So let's switch gears a little bit because you like to talk about career mapping. So tell us what that is and why it's important.
Oh, yeah. One of my favorite topics here. So, I love the concept of having a career roadmap, right? So, when we work inside of organizations, we have product roadmaps. We have, big plans that we work from, that we step back and do market research and take time to evaluate, like, what's next? Where should we be investing our time, energy, resources, etc.? However, what I've found over many years of working with professionals is that very few people actually take the time to step back and consciously think through the
Mm,
plan of what's next for them. And so I highly encourage people to do that. Like, take that time, do the strategic planning for your own career, and treat your career as if it was a project, right? So
oh,
step back, think about, what have you done, what do you enjoy doing, what gives you the most meaning and fulfillment in your career, and what skill set do you want to carry forward, and then how can you apply that and leverage those skills to move into something else. And that could just mean getting promoted and, going to a higher level, a higher title. Maybe it means becoming a domain expert and kind of niching down and becoming an expert in a specific technology or a certain industry. Um, but really thinking through, where are you right now? Where do you want to go? How many more years do you have left before quote unquote retirement? And maybe what might you want your life to look like even
mm,
after you retire, right? Because I find so many people say, oh, I don't know if I'll ever retire, but I'll probably shift into doing something else. So what is that something else, and what can you be doing to prepare right now, not just for your next steps throughout your, official working career, but then what else might you want to do in the future? And inevitably I always talk to people who say, you know I think at some point in time, I'd really love to be on a board, or I'd like to
mm,
get into teaching, or I'd like to open my own consulting practice, or become a coach. Well, unfortunately, those things do not happen overnight. And so it's really good to be thinking about, okay, well, where do I want to go? What compensation is possible?
mm,
How does that help me get to my end goal of, my financial goals, and actually setting me up for a long-term future? And then also, what else might I want to do after that? And what can I be doing right now to, one, build the skill set to help me be eligible for whatever might come next and next and next and next? And actually thinking about it as a long term trajectory, and how does everything feed into the
mm,
next thing? And so developing the right skill set, but also developing the right network. And I think that
mm.
that's something that a
Yes.
lot of people just don't really think about. And so knowing where you want to get to eventually and who can help you along the way, and making sure that you are nurturing those relationships and building new ones. Like, if you don't already have the right people in place, who do you need to have in your network who can help open up doors for you and help you have, that longevity and long-term success to carry you through.
Yeah, that is so true. I can't agree anymore with the whole network and your circle and just who you know, because that's, let's be honest, how people get jobs. And that comes up a lot of, who's in your circle, because that's how someone's going to recommend you or say, I know this is available, and them knowing that you're interested in that. So I think that's huge. I think the interesting when you go back to now that I'm 20 ish some years in my career, your goals sort of change along the way, right? Like what my goals were for my career when I was 22 versus 32,
Mm-hmm.
42.
Mm-hmm.
It changes. And I don't know if I ever was looking ahead. And I think a lot of times we get stuck on titles, and it's not about just titles, right? Like it's about what
Mm-hmm.
makes you happy. And but how do you get someone to focus on? Because I think of that, people through the years, especially women, who are like, well, I want to be a director, I want to be a vice president, I want to be a CEO. Okay, that's great, but why? But like, what's gonna get you there? So how do you kind of balance that, like not getting so hung up on titles, but more about the path and those, whether it's short term or long term goals that you're trying to achieve?
It's important not to get hung up on titles, and that does give us a guidepost to go towards, right? And so if you do want to go after more senior level leadership roles, what I have found is that those who are already performing at that level are generally the ones who get the promotion.
Mm,
So, if you do want a director, VP, C-suite type of role, you need to get really clear on what is the skill set that's getting exercised at that level, and how does that differ from what you're doing right now? And it really does require a very different mindset, because the higher up the ranks that you go, the more strategic that you have to be, and the more that you need to learn how to not only solve problems but identify the problems to begin with. And sometimes that means, just sometimes that means knowing how to analyze data, or how to do market research, and how do you know what's coming next, and
right.
what do you need to do to learn how to chart a new course. Because that's what happens at that senior level leadership
Sure.
role, is that they are very strategic, and they're thinking of what comes next, and they're usually several steps ahead of where their team is in the implementation of things. And so when people first get into management, it's learning the people management skills,
Mm,
and knowing how to move from a technical person, from the one doing,
yep.
from the one being a doer, to becoming a people manager. But then the more and more and more that you rise in the ranks, it's more so about, okay, well, what's coming next, and how can I be far ahead of the curve, so
Sure.
that we can help, leaders of leaders and leaders and leaders and leaders, that trickle down effect. How do we help that implementation plan, get
Right.
built in throughout the entire organization?
No, that's so important. And because to your point, you can be really good at, it can be very technical. So maybe you're a really good salesperson, right? And your numbers you're
Hmm.
killing it. So what happens? You naturally get promoted, but that person may not be good with dealing with or managing people or handling a team. So it's a whole different skill set. And then to your point, the strategy comes as you continue to climb. So if that's your path that you want to take, it's building those skills as long as you're going along the path. Because I think we probably all can think of somebody who's been promoted because of their skill, and that wasn't because they were going to be a good manager or leader, and that's tough.
Hmm.
So that doesn't mean for
Hmm.
everybody. A lot of times people can grow and learn, but it's kind of identifying that early so you can have that right path.
And one other thing that I will add, that's also very important, if I may add this, is that it's not just about developing the skill set, but it's making sure that you're producing results, and that the right
Mm,
people know about your results. And that is your job as a professional, is to make sure that you're getting exposure for your results, and that who are the key people inside the organization that can make the decisions to help promote you and give you new opportunities. And do those people know who you are? Do they know what you're capable of? And do you have a good relationship with them, where when a new opportunity arises, you're the first person that comes to mind that says, oh, who should lead this is this person.
right. Oh my gosh. I just want to be
Hmm.
upfront to everybody. I did not pay you to say that. That is one of my favorite things to talk about. Through it comes up in almost every episode, but it's pie
Hmm.
and how your performance is
Mm.
table stakes. It's a foundation. You need to be good at what you do, but then it's your image, how people describe you, your brand, and then exposure. If nobody knows what you're doing,
Mm.
then it doesn't matter. So I love
That's
that that
right.
keeps coming up over and over again on these episodes, because I think that just reinforces how important that is. So I did not pay you to say
Hmm.
that. Thank you for
You're welcome.
throwing in one
Well,
of
I
my
mean, I'm
favorite
glad.
topics.
I'm glad that you reiterate that, because it is so important. It's crucial. It's crucial. And I think most people are so buried in the weeds of what they're doing on a day-to-day basis that they forget to stop, put their head up, look
Yep.
around and say, okay, what else is going on? And who do I need to be connecting with, and who needs to know about what I'm doing? And that networking piece has been proven time and time again that is one of the biggest reasons why people
Yep.
accelerate success in their career.
No, it makes sense. So
Yeah.
this has been amazing. Do you have any other parting advice for us, whether it's from the career mapping or from dealing with change?
I mean, I would say that, change is inevitable. No matter what kind of change that we're talking about, whether that's organizational change, career change, family change, community change, politic change, like
Right.
everything, change is inevitable. It's happening around us at all the time. However, suffering is optional, and it really truly is our mindset and what we bring to it. And I speak firsthand from experience here that, sometimes it's easy to kind of get into maybe more of a victim mentality of saying, like, oh my God, why is this happening? The sky is falling. There's too much. I just can't handle it. But how can you rise above that in yourself and move from victim to more of a visionary stance of, okay, you know what, this change is happening. However, what is within my control? What is within my influence? What can I do? Who can I talk to? Where do I want to go? And what will help support me in doing that? And just thinking through all the layers of
Yep.
systems is like, first it starts internal, right? So all the things that we talked about before is that, like, if you do feel challenged by the changes that are happening, what can you do to care for yourself so that it's not as scary as it actually seems? Because it's not that scary. We're all moving through this day by day, moment to moment, and we're getting through it, and we will always get through it. But how can you rise above that to be more strategic and more conscious of what's happening around you in a way that you can take action that truly matters and that will set you up for the long-term success that you desire?
I love that. That was such great parting words. Tanya, thank you so much for being here. If people want to connect with you or find out more about what you work on, where can they find you?
Oh, thank you, Betsy. Please come to my website, infiniteleaders.co. That's
Perfect.
infiniteleaders.co. Come check me out. I'm also on LinkedIn under Sonja Price,
And
Sonja.
launching a new podcast soon.
I am. Yes, yes, yes. I'm launching the Infinite Leaders podcast. So please come check that out as well.
Awesome. And we'll link everything from the Loud and Lifted podcast too. So make sure you get them in the right spot. Thank you so much for
Awesome.
being here.
Thank you. Thank you. This was really fun.
Quick recap. Translate your toolkit, pair passion with market reality, regulate your nervous system, and make your wins visible. If this lifted with you, share it with a woman you're rooting for and hit follow. Change is inevitable. Just keep surfing the wave. For more tools, tips, and tricks, follow us on Instagram. Until next time, stay loud and stay lifted.